Hello, my name's Sammy, aka 4-String Boy, and this is the Zoom AC3. Today I'm going to be reviewing this little pedal. It's something that a few of you have asked me to review, and it is also the staple of my live setup. This little pedal literally has everything I need in quite a smallish package. But before we talk about that, quick history lesson. So 4 years ago, I actually had my first ukulele live performance. Before then, I was used to either playing for Instagram or YouTube. And so that meant basically recording using microphones, phone mics, etc. I didn't plug in ever because I just didn't like the sound of piezo's. Always relied on mics. That was very easy. So when it came to performing live, I actually wasn't sure what to do. I'd always recorded using mics, so I assumed that would be the best way to go because that's the sound I liked. I hated the sound of piezo's. Now, thankfully, these first live performances was actually a UK mini tour sponsored by the Ukulele Project, who are a fantastic organisation. Thank you. And basically, what this meant was that each night I could actually play around with a different setup and see what sound I preferred. There's no better way of testing something than doing it when it matters, right? And so every single night was a different setup. Some I used mics, some I used different mics, condensers, some I used dynamics, some I used plugged in. And it kind of, like I said, gave me an overall feeling of what it's like playing live with all this different setup. Now, playing with a microphone actually wasn't as easy as I thought because I'm quite a quiet player on the ukulele. And so basically what that meant was I always had to remain quite close to the microphone. And actually because I play harmonics all the time and move up and down the neck, I used to kind of punch the microphone quite a bit. So it's not ideal. And so it really made me think. The second instance of me thinking about it was when I played the Berlin Ukulele Festival. And at the time when I was sound checking, there's the sound man who is only a god of sound. That's what I can call him. His name was Ragnar, who I love very much. And I was sound checking and just playing again with a mic. He asked me to plug in and I was like, I don't like the sound. So he said, okay, we'll use a mic. Sat there performing, playing with a mic, sound checking. And he said, cool, do you play any louder than that? And I looked back at him and went, nope. And he just looked at me and went, uh-oh. Now that interaction lives in my head rent-free all the time. I love it. But basically, he got over it and he managed to make it loud enough and give me a really excellent sound. That's why he's a sound god. But it did really, really, really make me think again that actually I should probably look into plugging in just for simplicity and, stop this punching mics and being kind of caved in having to play with a mic all the time. So Sammy did his research, had to look at all the different options. I needed something small and compact because usually when I'm playing ukulele festivals, it's in a different country. So I needed something I can fly with easily. And, well, this fellow was my answer. Now, thankfully, the Zoom AC3 is quite an easy setup. You basically just plug your ukulele in and then you can have another cable that runs straight out into the amp, or it can even run straight out into a PA, no amp required. Now, usually when we run it into an amp, we're mono, so it's just one cable in there because it's only one speaker. But obviously with PA, we have multiple speakers, and so you want a more stereo output. And again, this baby absolutely has it. It has two XLR outputs that go straight into the PA like a DAO box, or we've got two mono outputs as well. One of the cool things is that I never planned on using it for, but ended up doing so lots, was you can actually just plug a pair of headphones into the mono output. It says phones on it, so just plug a pair of headphones into it, put them on, plug your ukulele in, and then you've got your plugged in sound in your headphones for practicing. I use this a lot running up to gigs, especially when I wasn't used to the pedal, so I could just really hear the sound. It wasn't affected by the room or anything like that. I could just hear the sound, play and tweak with all the settings, really listen to what I was changing. And actually for kind of like a more late night practice as well, when I want to use effects and stuff like that, yeah, it worked out great. Now, when we turn up to a gig and we just plug into the PA, the problem is often sound. When we plug into an amp, it has a preamp and we can basically play around with all the settings and tweak it to our liking. On the PA, it's not that simple, and so we kind of have to go with whatever we're really dealt with. And from all the ukulele festivals that I've played on the bigger festivals, it's always going straight into a PA. And so basically, I wanted to be in control of my sound. I wanted a better sound. And so this fella just literally slips into my backpack when I'm flying, and that's it. Then I'm in control of everything. Now, one of the big things is its size. It is quite a small kid, and I say quite small because obviously a single pedal would be smaller. I'd reckon it's about the size of 3 pedals lined up completely pushed together. That's it. Or 2 pedals with a jack lead between one another. But it's the perfect size, like I said, to travel with, and also it comes with a power adapter, which is really tiny, which is absolutely perfect. Or it does take basically 2 AA batteries if you need it, but I'd always like to rely on a power adapter. This pedal is built like a tank, thankfully. I've smashed it around when flying, when traveling, when on gigs and stuff like that. I don't have to be too careful with it, which is the very nice thing about it. And it's kind of covered in this fake wood effect that I thought I'd hate, but actually going with the whole like kind of ukulele vibe, I think it looks quite okay. And even being bashed around and everything like that, there's actually really no marks on it that's kind of like the wood finish is a bit shit and is just kind of chipped off. It seems really solid. So anyway, that's everything about the physicalities of this little box. What I'd like to do is talk about my favorite features of the box, why it's so important for me to use it when playing live. Right, so there's a lot of stuff going on this pedal, but I'm just going to run through basically my favorite things, the things that I use to set up my sound. And even though they might not matter to you, hopefully you can appreciate why it matters to me. And just quickly, this pedal was made for basically acoustic instruments in mind, really acoustic guitars. It's really, really difficult / impossible to find ukulele specific pedals to find. But really a ukulele with a piezo pickup is very much the same as a guitar with a piezo pickup. So this kit is kind of equipped to tackle everything that you're going to need for your ukulele. Okay, so I said the first thing I started this video was I just don't like the sound of the piezo plugged in. So I wanted something to be able to tweak all of this. And we have it here. The Zoom AC3 has a built-in preamp, and basically you can tweak straight away your bass, middle, and treble settings, tweak them to your liking so you get your perfect sound. But the unique thing it kind of has is what it says, a source guitar and then a target guitar. Now the source guitar is basically on your dial, you have to select to what kind of guitar you're plugging in. Sadly, mini guitar wasn't an option, so I chose the nylon strings option and I use that instead. And what it's meant to do is kind of like balance and kind of resonate with the acoustic sound of whatever it is that you selected. I've gone through all of them, and like I said, the nylon string setting seems to be the best one for the uke. It kind of keeps all the tones and where I want them, basically. So that's the one I recommend using, but feel free to twiddle around and see how each one sounds different. You then have this target guitar, so basically it tweaks the EQ even more and kind of changes your whatever you're playing to sound like whatever it says. And again, it lists all these different types of acoustic guitars. So for me, I didn't really want it to sound like any acoustic guitars, or I wasn't really sure of how it's going to change my sound. So I've cycled through them and I actually keep it off. Now, the second option may sound really silly, but it's so important to me to have a tuner that also mutes you at the same time. That is absolutely perfect for myself as somebody who likes to, first of all, play in various different alternate tunings. So all the time when I'm playing live, often each song is in a different tuning. So rather than hearing to all the audience, I can just tap my tuner on, it mutes everything, and then I can do it in silence. The other beauty with a mute switch is that basically, as soon as you hit that mute switch, you can rip your jack lead out of the ukulele and you don't get that massive bang sound that the sound person looks at you dead in the eyes and be like, I hate you so much, please die. In certain gigs, I sometimes bring a baritone with me, and so I will switch between tenor and baritone. And like I said, it's nice just to be able to hit the switch, rip the jack lead out, and be able to plug in without annoying the person who's in control of my entire sound. If you've ever been there, then you'll fully understand what it's like, the embarrassment of doing that. But if you haven't, this is what it feels like. Okay, so the third thing is this thing has an inbuilt compressor. Now, for those of you who don't know what a compressor is, a compressor's job is to basically make all the loud things basically quieter, and then all your quiet things louder. It kind of gives you a more rounded sound so that nothing kind of goes really loud or really quiet. Everything is kind of even, so that sometimes if you're switching into finger picking or harmonics, then your sound can get a lot quieter than when you're strumming. This compressor basically evens all that out, so you don't have to constantly worry about triggling with your volume or trying to play louder than you should. Thankfully, there's also a nice volume control that controls your output and your gain. So, for example, again, on my different ukes, I have different pickups. And so whenever some have different volumes, and that means when switching between the two, Some might be louder or quieter, and that's easily for me to adjust with just a one knob kind of turn. It makes it nice and easy. Right, my fourth favorite thing is that even though we have this big middle effects section, is that we have a reverb separate to this. That means that throughout on my kind of clean tone, I can have a nice little subtle reverb. And then if I want to add any heavy effects, I can add that on without removing my current reverb. For me, it just makes a nicer like bass sound overall. So I'm really, really happy it has that. And the final thing is a little button that's quite tucked away, and it's an anti-feedback button. It's very, very, very useful for those of us who play acoustic instruments on stage. And all it does is basically sometimes we can get feedback because of our acoustic instruments can resonate too much and then it can start squealing. There can be certain basically frequencies that start to squeal and give you a bit of feedback. And what this button does is as soon as you start feedbacking, or as soon as you can just hear basically that tone start to squeal, you tap the button. It flashes for about 2 seconds and then it eliminates and squashes that frequency. I always use this basically when I'm sound checking at the start, and it means that I can get through the gig without ever worrying about feedback. For the bigger festivals, it's been an absolute godsend. So, in my opinion, all of those touches all put together basically make for a much, much, much nicer live sound. But the best way to show you is to make you listen to it. That's exactly what we're going to do. So I'm going to play my ukulele basically without the pedal. I'm going to run it direct into my sound card. So that is basically nothing as if I was plugging it into an amp. And then I'll use it through the pedal with all the settings that I use, basically compression, a bit of reverb, this source guitar, everything like that. So that concoction of things for me has really tidied up and just made me happier about performing live plugged in because, like I said, I'm so much happier with the tone that's coming out of my ukulele. But there's a whole section of this pedal that we've completely ignored yet, and that is the middle section, which is the effects pedal. Now we have 9 different effects pedals built in there, and like I said, I purchased the pedal again to try and just solidate my clean sound. That was the point. But throw in some delays, some sexy reverb, some pads. Yeah, that's a good deal. So I found that live, basically, I'm mainly using the tape echo, the mod reverb, and the pad effects. I utilize those 3 a lot. For each of the effects, you've also got 3 control knobs, and that basically you can control how strong the generated effect is, how much feedback you're going to get from your delays and your reverbs, and then a time decay, which basically changes the time between the delays and also how much sustain that you're going to get from these effects as well. So I'm going to run through each of the effects with basically the 3 control knobs set at 12 o'clock, just so you can hear like that's the closest you can get to a standard setting. And then I'll also modify the knobs a little bit so you can hear how the effect can be basically altered, you know, how subtle it can go and how insane it can also go. And so there we have it. Those are the many, many, many features of the Zoom AC3. Now, I purchased this thing for around 290 euros on Thomann, but if you basically are looking for a smaller and cheaper version, one does exist. That kit is called the Zoom AC2, and basically it's, from what it looks like, is almost half the size of this pedal, and it's around 200 euros. Now, the big caveat with that is basically it seems to include everything the AC3 does. It's just missing out the effects part. So you don't get any of the effects that you would get with the AC3. Now, that might be perfect for you. You might not give a shit about the effects, and you might just want to basically clean up your tone and have a good DI. But for me, the extra 90 euros for these effects, and especially for that pad sound, oh my God, for me, that's completely worth it. But for you, like I said, you know, you might want the smaller, cheaper option, and thankfully, thanks to Zoom, that does exist. Either way, I've dropped a link for both of them in a pinned comment. So go check out both of them, go have a look at them, and see if you need to add one to your arsenal. I have to say that I've been much, much happier performing live with the little box in control. It kind of takes a lot of the stress out for it. Like I said, just stuff like I mentioned earlier, you know, the mute switch, the being in control of my reverb, the compressor, all of that has basically tidied up just my enjoyment on stage, basically. And so if you're someone like me who's really not a fan of a piezo sound and you want to tidy it up plus have some effects in there, I really recommend checking this out. Let me know in the comments if you have any further questions about the pedal at all. One thing I didn't mention was the boost function, and that's because I don't really use it, but basically it enables you to have a volume boost at any point when you touch the pedal. It's useful for people who like to solo and stuff. I don't like to solo, so I haven't found that I've needed it, but it is very useful for when you need to basically have a boost in volume very quickly without trying to go down and turn that volume knob. But yes, any further questions about the pedals, please ask me in the comments, or the ukuleles that I'm using, or on my favorite crisps. I take it all very, very seriously. Thanks so much for listening to me today, and I'll be back in a couple of weeks with a review on a new flight baritone ukulele. So currently at the moment, she's here with me, settling in, and I'm just testing her out through. So in a couple of weeks, I'll be ready to give you all a good review. If you want more ukulele goodness in your life, please feel free to subscribe to the channel. And if this video was helpful, you know, give it a hold like and all that stuff. Thank you and love you. Have a wonderful day.